Hello and welcome to the A-List. I'm Colin Hughes. Joining me today is Finnigan from 101.9 The Mix. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Happy to have you. All right, so let's jump right in.
Okay.
Let's start with how you got your start in radio.
Yeah, so let's see. I'm 25 now, so I got into the business when I was 14, so I've been in about 11 years. It was kind of a crazy story. It was unintentional. I grew up next to a radio station in my hometown of Benton, Illinois, which is about 5 hours south of Chicago, about pretty far south in Illinois. So I grew up next to this radio station, and my dad was actually in radio in the 70s when he was in high school. And coincidentally, it was the same radio station that he was on back in the 70s. And there was always a picture of him in the house that was, you know, like we're talking 1976, bell bottoms, you know, had the ashtray. I mean, like it was like total, you know, shag carpet on the walls. It was like total album rock radio station. But it was always one of those things. I thought it was so cool that, you know, that was on the radio. So I guess I went over there one day and I wanted a tour. So they gave me a tour of this radio station. I was in like 8th grade. So, and I fell in love with it. I thought the concept of talking into a microphone and it going through this little wire and then out to, you know, thousands and sometimes millions of people depending on the city you're in, that concept was amazing. It still intrigues me to this day. So I just wouldn't leave. I would go there every day after school whether they asked me or not. And a lot of them were like, who's this kid? Why is he here? Does he work here? Is it your kid? They thought that I was someone's kid that worked there. Like, they didn't know who I was. And I kept showing up and I didn't leave until they gave me a job because I just wanted to be around the whole business. And I went there every day after school, and they had to start paying me. So when I was 15, I went and got my worker's permit, and so they could, you know, legally pay me because there's child labor laws out there. And I went there, and I loved it. I was there every day, and I ended up being a part of the morning show. And they called me the Shadow. That was my first on-air name because I was a job shadower. So I was the Shadow. And they did a segment called The Shadow Knows, which is where it was an oldies format station, by the way. So we're playing Chuck Berry and Buddy Holly and all this stuff. So because I was young and hip and cool in their eyes, I would take rap lyrics and I would transpose them into what it would say back in the 50s. So we'd take like a 50 Cent song and I go, well, this is what he means in 50s and 60s lyrics. It was really funny, and that's what I did, and that's kind of how I got started. And then I became an executive producer of the local sports shows and high school sports and things like that. And then I produced a public affairs show, and I was behind the mic for a long time. And then for about 3 years, I never cracked the mic outside of on the morning show, but it wasn't my show. I was just, you know, talking. And then I finally got a chance to be on a top 40 station in Carbondale, Illinois, which is the big market down there. SIU Carbondale is the big school, and it was the big top 40 station, like a Kiss FM or the Mix or B96 here in Chicago. And I went down there for an internship. But it was funny because when I first got into high school or into my junior year of high school, they put me into this internship program. They go, oh, well, you need to go and get an internship. And I'm like, I don't need an internship. I'm already working at a radio station. I'm good to go. You guys are crazy. And they said, well, you know, there's bigger things out there than the radio station you're at. So you should go check out this one down there. And it was a cool station, and I thought, you know, there's one way to like, you know, get in good with the girls was to go work for the big radio station. It was really cool. So I said, okay, I'll go down there and I check it out. So I go down, and within a couple days they offered me a job, and they said, we want to put you on the air. And I'd never done it before, and I said, this is crazy. You guys are nuts. I'm not going to do that. But I did it, and it was probably the worst 2 hours of radio ever recorded in history. It was awful. But it wasn't bad enough to where they didn't ask me back. So they asked me back, and I started working down there. And let's see. So I worked at both radio stations for about 5 years, all through high school and my freshman year of college. And I ended up being the night guy on CILFM, was the station at Carbondale. So I would work at the radio station in Benton, my hometown, in the morning before school. I'd go in there at like 5 in the morning, and I'd help with the morning show, and I'd do the news, and I'd go to school. And then I was in the work program, so I got out of school at noon. I'd go home and do homework and whatever I had to do. I'd have dinner with my family, and then I would drive down to Carbondale, which is a 45-minute drive. And then I would be on the air Monday through Friday, 7 to midnight. And then I'd come home and I'd wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and I'd do it all again. I did that for about 2 years, solid. So I lived and breathed it. And I still do, but I mean, I was hardcore into it. I mean, I missed a couple homecomings and proms just because I would rather been on the radio. It was fun. So that's kind of how it all started in Southern Illinois, and then progressed from there.
Oh, that's awesome.
So
then from Southern Illinois, you ended up getting into St. Louis.
yeah, I was 19. I was I was always striving for more. I always said to myself, well, if I could just be on the air in Carbondale, then I'm good. You know, it's like I just want to crack the mic at the big station in my hometown, in my area, and then I'm great. And then you know, you start to itch for more, and then so it's like, okay, well, if I could maybe get on the air in St. Louis, the big radio station in St. Louis, you know, Z1077 was, and they're still the #1 station in the city, and you know, 100,000 watts of power. I mean, like, you could hear that thing. I could hear it at home, and it was listening to these guys, and you know, these guys on the air like Kirk Copeland and Hayes and all these huge DJs that I just loved, and I said, you know, if I could just meet them, you know, that would be the thing. So one of my buddies at CIL-FM in Carbondale knew the program director of this radio station, a guy named Tommy Austin, and he goes, you know, I got invited to Tommy's Super Bowl party. You should come with me as my +1, and you know, maybe talk to him about being on the air. So I'm like, this is the greatest. This is like getting invited to like Oprah's house in the Hamptons. This is like the biggest thing for me. So I'm like, okay, yeah, let's go. So I went to this Super Bowl party, and we got there a little late, and of course they're all adults, so they're drinking adult beverages, and everyone's kind of you know, 3 sheets. And I go, this is the perfect time to ask Tommy to put me on the radio. I'll do this. So I went. I said, hey, you know, I'd love to, you know, be on your radio station. You should let me, you know, do this. So he goes, yeah, why don't you go right now? He goes, it's you know, it's midnight, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. Not many people are listening. We're out of prime time hours. So why don't you, your phone's ringing.
That it is.
That's right. You know what? Let's just roll with it. Okay. I don't even want to stop. This is cool.
I have no idea.
That's a good song.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
All
I like that. So he says to me, he goes, why don't you go on the air right now? And I said, okay. So I went, and it was, and that wasn't the worst 2 hours of radio recorded. It probably wasn't St. Louis. I was so nervous. I forgot even what song I talked up, but it was crazy. And so I did that, and I guess he listened to it the next day, and he goes, yeah, I'd love to bring you back and bring you on. I'm like, this is the greatest thing in the world. I'm now working for, you know, KSLZ in St. Louis. This is the biggest thing. So I was 19. I was the youngest person hired at that radio station ever, I think, to this day. And I worked there I moved to St. Louis. I was on a piano scholarship in college, and I dropped the scholarship and became an online student, so I could work full time at the radio station. The whole concept of me going to class versus going to interview an artist was not going to work with me. I was like, I have to be an online student because I can't give up interviewing Will Smith, which that happened, Miley Cyrus, which that happened. It all happened during the day when I would have been sitting in class. I'm like, that was the best decision ever to be an online student. So I did that, and I worked at Z in St. Louis for 3 years. And the thing was, is because I was so young, most of the people that were on the air there were 29, 30, 31. So all the sales department, they thought I was their age, because I was very mature for my age, because I started working in radio when I was 14. I had to grow up really fast. And so it was so interesting because they all thought I was, first of all, I thought it was at least 21, let alone 25, 27. So everyone was confused on how old I was. So they would send me to these events, and I got sent, one of the best ones is I got sent to the Casino Queen, which is a gambling, it was a casino on the Mississippi River. Of course, you got to be 21 to get on the boat. And I was 19. They sent me there to give away a Mustang. There was this huge promotion. I'm the Finnigan from Z1077 is going to be there to give away this Mustang because you people have spent X amount of dollars at the casino, so you're qualified to win this car. So I get there to the casino, and they don't let me on the floor because I'm not 21. And I go, but I'm the guy giving away the car. You got to let me on. And they go, well, sir, it's the gaming commission. You know, we can't break the rules. And I said, well, I tell you what. I was like, when everybody in there gets upset because they haven't won the car yet, I was like, you're gonna want me in there because I have the key. I have the key to the car. Like, I'm showing them. I'm like, boop boop. Like, it's lighting up. I'm like, I'm the guy. They wouldn't let me on the floor. So and they didn't break the rules. So, you know, not good for them. But so the radio station had to call another personality from the station to come down and give this car away because I had to stand. There was a line. It was like a black line. I couldn't cross that line. So I had to give the key to them and shamelessly sit there while they gave the car away. And the sales department, I still get made fun of for that because they all thought I was like at least 21, but I was not. So that happened a lot. But it was fun.
Yeah.
So.
All right. So we're going to be right back here on the A-List with Finnigan from 101.9 The Mix. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome back to the A-List. I'm Colin Hughes. With me today is Finnigan from 101.9 The Mix in Chicago.
Thanks for having me back.
You're still here?
I'm still here, yeah. We didn't burn the place down.
No, still here. It's exciting. All right, so when we left, you were talking about St. Louis and how you weren't 21 and you wanted to be.
Right, I wanted to be really bad,
right.
yeah.
So going from there, how about getting back into Illinois? Because obviously now you're here.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, so across the border again. I was in St. Louis. I finally turned 21 in St. Louis, and they let me do fun stuff. So that was a good time. But right before I turned 21, this is like literally 2 weeks before, I was offered a position on 103.5 KISS FM here in Chicago. So it was in the Clear Channel family. So I was on the air in Chicago. I was traveling back and forth, so I still lived in St. Louis when I turned 21, but I cracked the mic there, and I once again was the youngest person hired at the station. I was following this trend. It was crazy. So I got on the air at KISS in Chicago, and how it happened, it was really funny. So like I said earlier in the interview, I said, okay, well, if I could just get on the air in St. Louis, I'm good. That I'm fine with that. Well, then I got on the air now, and then I'm like, oh, I want more. This is so much fun. You become. I would never say the word famous, but people became to know who they started to know who I was, and it was fun. It was interesting, and it was people start to rely on you because you're this media personality that they trust you and they look for your opinion, and it's a very satisfying thing. So I said, okay, well I want that on an even bigger level. So I thought, okay, well what's the biggest city that's the closest to St. Louis? And it was Chicago. It was Market 3, and I was like, oh, there's no way I'm going to get hired there. I'm like, you've got guys like Mancow and Oprah come out of Chicago. It's like they're not going to hire me. But I put a demo together and I sent it up to KISS. And one of the guys that was on the air there previously was a guy named Ty Bentley. And he got a hold of my demo and he thought it was good. He thought it was really good. Good enough that I sent it to his boss, a guy named Rick Vaughn, who's one of my dearest friends to this day. He's the greatest guy in the world. And I sent it over to Rick, and he didn't listen to it. He probably deleted the email. And I sent it again. He deleted the email, because the guy gets hit up by people all over the country all day long. Probably gets 500 emails a day. So I couldn't get in front of Rick, so I finally sent it to Ty, and Ty goes, I'll get Rick's attention. He goes, I'll just play your demo live on the air on KISS, and I'll have the listeners call in, and they'll decide whether we should hire you or not. And I'm like, this is bad news. It's like everyone's going to just be like, oh, he's awful, like don't do it, because I just know how people are. So that's what Ty did. He played my demo on the air. He knew Rick was listening, and I think it was less than 90 seconds after it aired, I get an email from Rick Vaughn, and it said, what are you doing on my radio station? And I thought, oh my God, this guy hates me. I'm like, I'm never gonna get hired. I'm blacklisted from the company. And it turned out he was being funny, and it was a joke, and he goes, I'm sorry I haven't gotten back to you, but think you're great, would love to have you come up here. And I said, oh, I'm there. So I moved up to Chicago and became a part of the KISS air staff, and it was amazing. It was one of those things that it's very surreal when you drive down Lakeshore Drive, or you drive in the city from the Eisenhower, the Dan Ryan, or whatever, and you look at what you're driving into, and just thinking about, and that's not even the audience. The audience, I mean, there's a big audience in the city, downtown, but the suburban listening, it's amazing. It's one of those things that it gives me goosebumps to this day that I'm able to, that they let me talk to that many people. They let me give my 2 cents of an opinion that really means nothing to all these people. So it was cool to be a part of that, and I got to do some really, really great things and be a part of a lot. I had the opportunity to be on Sirius XM. So one of my goals was to be syndicated nationally. First of all, I didn't think it would ever happen. I definitely didn't think it happened when I was 21. So the company I previously worked for, Clear Channel, we owned, or we still owned, or they still own some Sirius XM channels. And at the time there was one called KISS XM 11, and it was the same format of KISS in Chicago, and they were looking for some people to be on the air. So I once again sent in a demo, and I applied and got rejected, and sent it again, got rejected, got to send it, and I think I did it about 4 times, and they finally, okay, we'll let you on the radio station. So I hosted the afternoon slot from 2 to 4 p.m. Eastern time. So I was on during the day. I mean, it was mid-morning in LA and afternoon in New York, and syndicated nationally, and it was one of the most surreal things. I mean, for me, it was I looked at it as, oh my God, I'm on the radio down the dial from Howard Stern. because that's where Howard is now. And Howard is, you ask anybody in radio, whether you love him or hate him, he is the most iconic figure in radio. And you have to just admire, whether you agree with what he does or not on the air, you have to admire what he's done. And it was just one of the most incredible things for me to just be on the same platform as a guy like Howard. So it was really cool. And I did that for about a year and a half. And then I was at KISS for I think 3 years total, and I stayed on the air in St. Louis. So I voice tracked in St. Louis, I voice tracked in Portland, I voice tracked in Jacksonville, Florida, and then I did a couple other cities, one-off cities here and there. But it was a really great experience to be allowed to be on all those radio stations around the country, and they're all great stations. I mean, just incredible, #1 brands in their market. It was very cool. So
awesome. And then from KISS and the national stations, and then
came the mix. Yeah. So it was about let's see, I'm coming up on my 2-year anniversary at the mix this August. So it was a couple years ago. It was right around Lollapalooza weekend, and there was an opening at the mix. Which prior to this, there was the same job was open about a year and a half before that. I applied for it when I was at KISS, and I didn't get it. And it was a huge bummer. It was a big letdown because the mix was one of those stations that and it's nothing against KISS in Chicago or any company. The mix is more my style. I feel like I'm not the crazy wacky, top 40 jock, pardon my like strippers in the studio, like that whole thing. I mean, it wasn't really my thing. I was more on the targeting a little bit of an older female audience. So so the mix was kind of the station I really wanted to go after. So I applied, I got rejected, and then I applied again. Lollapalooza weekend, or it was about a week before Lollapalooza, and it was so interesting because I started Lollapalooza with Clear Channel and iHeartRadio. And I was working in the press tent, and then I went in for the interview on over the weekend, and I got the job. And then the last day of Lala on the Sunday, I was employed by the mix. So it was like I started at this press tent with iHeartRadio, and then I moved 2 tents down to 101.9 the mix. It was really funny, but. And then it was interesting. So when I was there, and I've never even told this story before, when I was there at iHeartRadio and for Lollapalooza, I knew that I was going in for this interview at the mix, but I had never met the program director before, Mary Ellen, and who's now my boss. And she knew that I was coming in. I knew that I was coming in, and we both knew that we were going to be at Lollapalooza. But to keep it professional, we didn't, because I saw her many times, so we didn't want to, talk to each other because it's just out of respect. So one of the record reps that works for one of the labels, he goes, have you met Mary Ellen? We'll have to introduce you to her. And I'm like, my heart drops. I'm like, oh my God, they know. Someone knows that I'm going in for this interview. And I was like, I'm gonna get, they're gonna out me. So they introduced us. So she and I, we shake hands and like we looked at each other and we're like, see you tomorrow. Like we said that inside. It was one of those things that was unspoken. And then we went in for the job. And it was just kind of funny, but how the business works. But so that's kind of how it happened. So I've been at the mix a little over a year and a half, coming up on 2 years, and it's been absolutely incredible. It's my dream job. I absolutely love the station, the company, the things that they allow me to do. The sky's the limit there. If I've got an idea, they'll listen to me. They may not always do it because I have crazy ideas, but just the fact that they let me be who I am and who I want to be on the air, and such an incredible brand with the Eric and Kathy Morning Show, and we've got great personalities like Lisa Allen and Kaz in the afternoon, and then myself. It's just it's very surreal to be a part of a lineup like that, and people consider us around the country the biggest hot AC station in the country. I mean, we have more of a brand and iconic role out of the New York and LA stations. I mean, people think of WTMX in Chicago, and that in itself, I mean, I just gave myself goosebumps just thinking of that in 11 short years, I went from, banging on the door at this radio station just because I didn't want to go and flip burgers for a summer job. I'm like, hey, there's air conditioning. Let's go hang out in there. Versus that flash forward, 11 years, which is not a long time at all. It really flies by when I think about it. To think that I would be here talking to you about what I'm doing, it's really crazy to think about. It's surreal.
Yeah.
So
last question.
Yeah.
If you were to give advice to a young person, say in high school, what would be that one piece of advice? Network. Find out who runs whatever if you're going to a party, who owns the house? If you're going to an event, who put it on?
Find out the people, the movers and the shakers, because it was something that my parents taught me very young. My mom is still an educator, and she gave me business cards when I was 10 and told me how to shake hands and look people directly in the eye and say their name back. So it's like, hi, I'm Nathan. Oh, it's nice to meet you, Nathan. You say that in your head, you remember their name. And you do that, and I caught on at a young age at doing that, and I don't know what it was. Funny story, real quick. So we went to Chicago when I was younger. I was like 11 or 12 for a family vacation. Came up here for a long weekend, and we went on a cruise that was on Lake Michigan at a Navy pier. The boat's not there anymore, but it was the Ugly Duckling cruise. It's this big yellow ugly boat, and we went on this thing, and I got separated from my parents. They weren't worried about me because they're like, well, he didn't fall overboard. He's somewhere on the boat. They looked all over for me. Then they finally started to get worried. We can't find him anywhere. They found me. I was with the captain. I was driving the boat. I was 12. Because I go, well, there's somebody in charge here. So I went and I found the captain, and I just started talking to him and just, hey, never be afraid to talk to anybody. Just go, because you know what? If they shun you and they blow you off, you've lost nothing. It's like whatever. You're back to where you were before you didn't talk to him. So you know, it's one of those things you just go in. So I was with the captain, and ever since then, I've always kind of been that guy. So I just. You get to the top, you find out who the people are that make the decisions, and you go in and you meet with them. And you know, following up is the biggest thing in the world. I mean, if somebody gives you a business card, no more than 24 hours. You send them an email. You say, hey, it's nice to meet you. Here's my contact information. Don't hesitate to let me know if you ever need anything, whether you can do anything for them or not. You're doing something for them right there to let them know that you're interested, to let them know you're a go-getter, to let them know that you want whatever they have to offer. And you're doing it in a way to where it doesn't look like you're taking advantage of them. You're doing it in a very sincere way, and I think networking is absolutely where I got. I mean, if it wasn't for me to know that Tommy Austin was the program director of Z1077 and getting invited to his Super Bowl party, most people would have been like, well, it's not the radio station. Why do I want to go to his house? No. Go to his house. You got him in a zone where he's out of the office. He's dressed down. He's having a good time. He's having a couple cocktails, watching the Super Bowl. That's where you get to know those people. That's where you get ahead of the game before anybody in an interview. I mean, that's how you do it. So, you know, and it doesn't always work out, but if you do that as often as you can, you'll get where you want to be.
All right. Well, thank you very much for coming in.
Thanks for having me. This is great.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's do that.
Good luck, man.
Yeah,
thanks
you
for having
too.
me.
I don't think you need any luck, but
well, no, they could fire me tomorrow. You know, it's all about, you know, you live and die by the ratings. But I'm happy to be where I am, and I'm very lucky and very fortunate. So
all right.
Thanks for everything.
Well, we'll see you next time on the A-List. I'm Colin Hughes. Bye bye.